Sup? Do thousands of books, trainings, and courses about motivation help to become richer and more successful? Definitely. But unfortunately, only to those people who write these books and courses.
This episode could be devoted to analyzing various business coaches selling success. But I think it's much more interesting to understand from a scientific point of view how does motivation work in general. Many people want to be less lazy, not to procrastinate. Get up at 6 a.m., learn foreign languages, don't get tired of work and lead an active life.
Me too, by the way.
And when some man says that for a measly $3,000 he's willing to let you in on the secrets of how to accomplish this, it's no wonder that so many very different people are ready to give him their money. But why don't the graduates of all these trainings become the new Elon Musks? Thousands of motivational coaches around the world say that each of us has almost limitless possibilities. The only thing we lack is motivation.
And I'm saying it's illegal. No, not that all motivational trainers should go to jail. Just their claim that the cause of our troubles is a lack of motivation turns counter to Yerkes-Dodson law. Yes, don't be surprised. In psychology there are laws, although you can count them on your fingers.
The Yerkes-Dodson law states that excessive motivation makes our performance worse, and for each person there is an optimum of motivation depending on what he or she does. And the more complex the task we face, the lower will be the level of motivation at which we can solve it effectively. This law seems illogical, but it was discovered in the early 20th century and hundreds of times tested on mice and humans, at a time when ethics is still few people worried about. And in fact, the law is explained very simply. Because of the high level of motivation, we begin to feel more stress, anxiety, and worry about our actions. And as a result, we start to work worse. Another reason why it's bad to over-motivate yourself is frustration. This condition occurs when we want something very much and put a lot of effort to achieve it. But the result turns out to be much more worse than we expected. This causes us to feel very sad and disappointed, and the likelihood that we will try to do the same thing again is greatly reduced. The world begins to seem worthless and we feel like complete failures.
But am I really trying to prove that being motivated is a bad thing? Well, the answer to that question depends on what kind of motivation we're talking about.
We are born already motivated. No one forced us to look for other mother's breast, play with cubes, and put various objects in our mouth. Something from birth pushes up to get out of bed after waking up and look for adventure. When we are born, most of our motives are driven by vital needs. But the older we get, the more we have motives that are shaped by society, and the original natural motives also begin to change under its influence. Psychologists divide motivation into two groups: extrinsic and intrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is responsible for actions that don't require any external reward. Someone paints pictures day and night, although he never thinks of selling any of them in his life. Someone takes part in various volunteer programs, spending a lot of energy and time on it. And someone plays the guitar. People do all these things because they see the value in them, or they just like them. External motivation, on the other hand, is based on some rather specific reward for our actions, which in themselves may not be interesting to us, and we have been dealing with it all our lives. Finished university, got a diploma. Cooked food, got a tasty treat. Took a girl to a restaurant, and she got mad because the waiter was rude. Well, a bad experience is an awesome experience. The fundamental difference here is not whether the reward is material, but whether a person chooses his own goal and whether he can change it or give it up even on his own. And it seems most logical to combine these two types of motivation when we want to achieve something. But no. It seems very strange to me too, but if you start materially rewarding people for actions caused by intrinsic motivation, the intrinsic motivation becomes much weaker. And this has been proven in hundreds of studies. For example, a person likes to learn, but if you start forcing him to study and punish him for lack of aspiration, it turns into an external motivation. He loses the feeling of power over his own life and his subjectivity, and slowly the initiative and sense of his own desires begins to disappear. Our psyche turns want into must. This can explain the fact that in our free time we so happily watch soap operas, scroll social networks, and engage in other unproductive activities. We simply get tired of doing the shoots, and our psyche probably seeks to do something for which we will not be punished or rewarded. Important note: I don't mean to say that rewarding yourself for your work is wrong. After all, even if you like your work, doing it, you will encounter a lot of moments that you will not particularly like. Yes, and constant work begins to tire us and we usually have to force ourselves to do it. And you will not be able to live normally and do somehow professionally if you don't get money from your work. Try to celebrate your important achievements somehow. Psychologists have proven the benefits of rewarding yourself for long work. I want to say that if you have some desire to do something simply because you like it, you shouldn't try to add some additional external rewards to it. Otherwise, your original desires may simply disappear.
Please like this video, click on the bell and subscribe to the channel. Our motivation to make new videos for you will only increase.
There is another big problem with extrinsic motivation. It often forces us to do things we don't really want to do. And by following it, people start to experience a lot of negative emotions. And there is also an alienation effect, which makes us feel indifferent about ourselves and what we do. If we are constantly guided by external motivation, we simply lose ourselves. And the worst thing is that the inner motivation starts to disappear because of it. But it's the voice of our I. Thanks to it we develop, get new experience and show ourselves as a person. How many famous artists do you know who didn't like to draw, or famous engineers who didn't like to design something? So what do typical trainings offer us? Usually the participants are forced to imagine a blackjack with round heels, which they will get for their efforts. Open up a random success public, and you'll likely see the pictures of yachts, expensive cars, model girls. You'll also see Will Smith and Elon Musk, Joseph Bezos and Elon Musk, Statham and Elon Musk. Seriously, why he is in every motivational blog? But the point of it all is pretty simple. Create a bright external stimulus for us to aspire to.
And let me not ask the rhetorical question: does this technique work? Because you already probably realize what the answer will be.
Motivation is a drug. This is evidenced by the millions of views on YouTube of videos about successful success, and the fantastic money that the authors of personal growth courses receive. It actually works quite simply, because of positive and negative reinforcement. Or to put it simply, because of the carrot and whip. It's quite nice to realize yourself as beautiful, rich and successful. And motivational speakers try to inspire their listeners by colorfully describing their happy future. All this causes a whole spectrum of pleasant emotions. In our scheme, it will be a conditional carrot. And so, a person begins to go to his dream, but already at the very beginning of the path faces a huge number of difficulties. To start your own business, you need to at least open a company, And the paperwork isn't much pleasant. And the further a person goes, the more problems are dumped on his head. And he doesn't see any promised millions and yachts. Eventually, it begins to piss off, and the very path to success becomes a conditional whip. A person begins to think that he just lack of motivation, and he again goes to a super progressive outer course. Giving him a measly few $100, he again receives a carrot in the form of positive emotions. The vicious circle is closed.
And it's not good to fantasize about your success. Why? Really, why? Because these fantasies create false ideas that it will be easy to achieve results. And sometimes the imaginary begins to seem so real that we stop doing anything at all. But when we come back to Earth from the imaginary world, everything around us seems even more hopeless.
A lot of people, especially at a young age, have problems with not being able to find themselves. And it's quite natural, because the motives are deeply rooted in our unconscious. And emotions are the tool that allows us to understand our motives. Emotions are not something to be ashamed of or try to silence, because they show us what is really important to us. They should be taken as valuable information, but the funny thing is that emotions themselves are quite strong motivators for us. If it weren't for this fact, no one would watch funny videos on YouTube or do extreme sports. Okay, so I've already told you why almost all personal and business coaches are useless. And now it's time to offer you a unique motivational course based on reliable scientific knowledge. For only $30,000. No, okay, I'm ready to disclose the secrets for $29,000. Oh. How do they sell people scam with such a serious face? The point is that most people don't need motivation. It's more important to remove the demotivating factors. And the most important one that kills motivation is high stress. Our resources are very limited. In one of the previous videos, we even cited statistics showed that people are not able to work productively for more than 6 hours. And conflicts in the family, worries, and even just communication with people who piss you off, all this reduces them very much. And you will be surprised how much extra strength you will have when you can get rid of at least part of the above. For some reason, we also think that motivation can be replaced by willpower, but it doesn't work that way. For example, you worked hard to get the desired position, but the work at the new place has obviously not become less, and when the will resource runs out, and sooner or later it all runs out, you simply will not be able to function normally. It's much more important to create an environment for yourself in which you can do something without raping yourself and your psyche. And speaking directly about motivation, you come across the most effective known motivator all the time. That's advertising. Marketers like no one else know what people want. Human needs haven't really changed since the times when our ancestors ran with spreads after mammoths. Therefore, trying to motivate yourself, for example, that you will know 10 foreign languages is pointless. But the motivations that are used in advertising, for example to save time or to become healthy and beautiful, perfectly work, which is proved by how well the advertised product sells.
And then I wanted to voice a thought that I think is very important. Don't think that achieving something will make you much happier. Yes, we do feel happy for a while after we get what we want. But then we go back to our normal state. This happens because of so-called hedonic adaptation, the tendency of people to keep a rather stable level of happiness. And on the one hand, it's quite sad, but without it we probably wouldn't able to set new goals and develop ourselves. Why should we do something if everything is fine as it is? Sergey Viberov was with you. And remember that the world is much more complicated and interesting than it may seem to you.